Hey Bible lovers, I'm Tim Nichols and I'm here to bring you your Nichols Worth, and today from Loreto Publishing we have their version of the Douay Rheims Bible. So we're going to take a look at it, and we're also going to compare it a little bit to the Baronius Press version to kind of see which one works for you in the best way. So first of all, let's just take a quick look at the construction of this one. It is a sort of like a paper overboard, but it does have like leather look. So it's a very nice looking cover, and it seems to be pretty durable in the sense that it kind of takes some scuffing and scratching, and this is embossed in a little bit, so I think that'll hold as well. Now, one thing that really stood out to me about this one is check these ribbons out. Those are the thickest ribbons I've ever seen on a Bible of this size. Generally speaking, you have a 1/8 or a 2/8 inch. Those look like maybe a 1/2 inch. Those are some big, thick, double-sided ribbons. So, interesting choice there. They look a little overwhelming, but I tell you what, I gotta admit, I don't mind it at all. It's a really bold step. I think it's kind of cool. Now let's take a look at the spine. Spine looks really nice. I like the fact that they embossed this really deep in there. So I really feel like this gilding is going to hold up when you go on the back. The back is plain, no stamping, and no ISBN number on the cover. I always really appreciate that. It also has a sewn binding, and it has a really nice gold and red head and tail band to really match those ribbons. So now let's take a quick look at the liner. I thought this was kind of cool. I'm not exactly sure which cross this is, but it is one of the traditional crosses, and it looks rather nice. I like the touch there. So once we get into the Bible itself, of course we have your title page, your copyright page. This is printed and bound in the USA, so yay, gotta appreciate that. And then it has some little extras in the front. It has some images. I'm not sure if these are the Venetian or the Doré artwork, but it's really nice. Then it has a table of contents. Now I thought this was a little interesting. They use like an ellipsis here to kind of separate. Not sure the rationale behind that. For me, I would rather just that been clean, but anyhow, one thing I do like about it is it gives you the traditional names of the books. For example, I still don't know how to say this, the Paralipum, yeah, I'm not even going to try, but we know that's 1st and 2nd Chronicles. So that is super helpful. And then we got 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Kings. Then we know that's 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. Because that can be a little confusing, especially for those of us that are Protestants that aren't familiar with the more Catholic renderings of these book names. So once you get past the table of contents, you have your preface, just to kind of explain the translation. You have your encyclical letters. After your encyclical letter, you have a little artwork that introduces the book. It tells you to pray before reading the scriptures, pray after reading the scriptures, and then you move right into the Old Testament with an introductory image of the angel expelling Adam and Eve from the garden. And then you have your 2-column verse-by-verse layout, and Bishop Challoner's notes and your references are in the corner. I thought that was a very unique choice. So interesting. It has a really nice, bold, modern font of the book and the book introduction. And then one thing I thought was really cool about this one is, let's move on to another page so I can show you how each chapter starts with a drop cap. And it's not a really fancy, super crazy, ornate drop cap, but it does give you that kind of old English. And one thing that's really interesting is I noticed how many chapters start with the letter A as I was looking through this. But there's the letter I, really pretty. Another letter A, M. I'm going to say this is a 10 to 11 point font. I don't have confirmation on that, but it does look really good. Now I'm going to compare this to the mid-sized Baronius Press Douay Rheims, because I want you to check this out. Okay, this is a lovely layout, but that is a bit of a small font. So if you want something a little bit more in the mid-size, this is about an inch bigger. As a matter of fact, let me show you. This is the Knox, but it's the exact same size as my Douay Rheims. The reason I can't compare it is because it's got that big yap and it makes it look off. But you can see it's about an inch shorter and about a 1/2 inch less wide. So this is a slightly smaller block, but as you can see, it's a tremendously smaller font. And this has got a couple of things going for it. Number one, the font is nice and bold. This really reminds me, if you're familiar with the Thomas Nelson and Zonder Van Comfort print, this really reminds me of that print because it's so bold and large, where this is a little more narrow, a little more skinny, and the font is a little bit smaller. This is really a better laid out block because of those bold letters and the larger font. In order to even get close to this, you have to move to the large size, which is significantly larger than this. Check it out. Okay, we're talking an inch probably both ways, all the way around. So this is a big, bulky Bible to carry around. Plus, it's a bit thicker as well. So it's going to weigh a lot more. It's going to be a little more hard to handle. But let's look at the text size. When we get into the text size here, you can see there's not a lot of difference. As a matter of fact, I am going to say that it's pretty close to the same size font. This is somewhere around an 10 or 11 point font. Again, this is just a guess. Another thing that really stands out about this Loreto is the paper opacity is amazing on this thing. I mean, check that out. It's beautiful. I can't tell if it's line matched, but it looks to be pretty close to line matched. So good on them for that as well. But this has incredibly opaque paper, really beautifully laid out. Of course, this is going to have the Deuterocanon for the Catholics, also known as the Apocrypha for us Protestants. But once you get past the Old Testament, which is going to include Maccabees, Tobit, and all the extras, there's a little extras in the middle that I thought you might want to see. Really cool stuff. Of course, you have your introductory image, and then we have a historical and chronological table of the Old Testament. So it kind of gives you a history overview of the Old Testament in chronological order. We have a table of references. If you want to look up a word, they're in alphabetical order. Absolution, almsgiving, angels, on and on and on. This is stuff you would normally see in the back of a Bible. Then it has your family records. And I thought this was kind of neat. I wish they would have put it on thicker paper. Still yet, this is kind of neat because in Baronius Press, what they do is they have their images all kind of in the middle on thicker paper. But they also have your records on that thin paper as well. So what I wish they would do is use a little bit thicker paper. Now, it does create a little bit of a visual problem here because you can see that line looks kind of weird in the gilding. Now this one's not gilded at all, so they're not going to have that issue. So I'd like to see them put some thicker paper in the middle here, especially on the family records portion, because if you use a pen it could bleed through. But you have your family record, you have births and baptisms, 2 good long pages for that because we know Catholics like to have large families. And then we have First Communion, Confirmation, all these major events in your life, holy orders, deaths, and then we move into the New Testament. This is a verse-by-verse layout. This thing is beautifully laid out. If I can give them one big compliment, that's kudos on the way this thing's laid out. I love the drop caps. I love the nice, clean justification here to where it's not all wonky and going back and forth. I absolutely love the way they've put the verses on the edge here, nice and bold, easy to see. The book introductions are laid out really beautifully in a single column. I like the nice, clean, bold chapter numbers, the little brief introductions that kind of let you know what's going on. And as we move into the New Testament more, the words of Christ are in black. One thing I'd really like to see is I'd really like to see a Douay Rheims with the words of Christ in red, just to see what it looks like and to see how well it's done. Another thing they do is in the subheadings they put at the top of the page, just to let you know kind of what's going on, because they don't have them before every chapter. Instead, they have your Douay Rheims typical introductions to each chapter that can tend to be a little more lengthy, like chapter 9 right here. So again, references and Bishop Challoner's notes are in the corner. And then once you get to the end, we have the book of Revelations called the Apocalypse here. And then that's really it. They have some advertisements for some other Catholic material. The Haydock Douay Rheims Bible, I would love to see this one. One day I'm going to get my hands on that because that looks absolutely sharp. And then some different books that they publish, closing out with that nice little end sheet. It does seem that there's some reinforcement here, so that may hold it together a little bit better. It just really depends on how you treat your Bible. If you treat your Bible good, it's going to treat you good, no matter how it's constructed, unless it's constructed really cheaply, and I don't perceive that this one is. So there you have it. Keep calm. Jesus on. This is your nigga's word.